Geopolitics and trade wars can lead to nations establishing a security posture and trade position that make it challenging for others to challenge them, rather than creating winners and losers. This encourages countries to take action in their markets and form new security and trade partnerships with different nations for mutual benefit. Currently, the U.S. is focusing on enhancing security in the Americas and urging other nations to boost their security capabilities. This shift leaves European countries facing challenges from Russia, prompting them to consider forming a unified security alliance or exploring alternative options. The success of such an alliance depends on strong commitments from all member nations. Past security arrangements like NATO failed due to insufficient contributions from some European members and changing U.S. security priorities. To ensure security, countries must maintain a balanced security posture and robust deterrence against potential threats. Building meaningful trade relationships with other nations is essential to prevent unilateral actions by adversaries, as common allies can apply pressure in specific situations. Larger nations should seek trade relationships that avoid dependence on a single ally, strengthening their negotiating position. Many nations, including middle powers in Europe and Japan, have traditionally looked to the U.S. for security, but are now facing the need to re-evaluate their strategies. Japan is dealing with challenges from Russia and China, while European countries are also worried about Russia, along with their internal dynamics. In the Indo-Pacific region, countries like India are seeking U.S. support to counterbalance China while also cooperating with Russia for security. The situation is further complicated by trade relationships. Despite the significant trade volume between China and Europe, China has not been swayed to support Europe. This is partly because Europe has limited options to diversify away from China and exert pressure. Europe's strategy of engaging China to influence Russia has not yielded results, underscoring the drawbacks of relying solely on trade partners for security. The U.S. is pushing India in a similar direction, but it seems to be heading towards failure. There is a need to reassess the security architecture and trade relationships to achieve greater stability. It is important to note that there has been a relative calm between the USA and China following initial trade tensions, likely due to their mutual trade dependencies and broader security considerations. While there have been trade-related developments from both sides, no direct actions have been taken. This current state may appear stable, but both parties will continue to reassess as they adopt new positions. Trade is increasingly intertwined with security considerations as countries strive to prevent supply chain disruptions during emergencies, like wars or disasters. This has led to a shift towards prioritizing robust supply chain design over cost-based sourcing. Countries are looking for reliable partners to assist them during conflicts, as shown by India's choice to shift some expensive purchases to the USA and Europe instead of their usual suppliers. Companies in the USA and the European Union are pursuing strategic investments to strengthen their market position and gain a competitive edge. They are targeting markets that provide access to multiple other markets and enable them to effectively compete against rivals in low-cost regions. These investments are crucial for generating profits to fund ongoing research and development and to maintain technological superiority, enabling their firms to outpace competitors. Another critical focus is on sourcing minerals, particularly essential ones, to ensure a competitive supply chain. As you watch this video and contemplate potential opportunities, dealmakers are likely already exploring investment prospects. Regions that previously lacked investment under the traditional liberal trade regime may now attract investments due to their mineral resources. Security considerations and trade opportunities will significantly influence markets and shape important investment decisions. Currently, the USA is maintaining two conflicting trade and investment policy positions. On one hand, it has a tough geopolitical reality-based approach, while on the other hand, it upholds some strict policies rooted in earlier libertarian values. These policies restrict its partners from engaging in liberal trade and investments with countries like Iran, Myanmar, and certain African nations due to libertarian principles. This stance could hinder the US-led faction in global trade, allowing industries in other regions to benefit at the expense of companies in the US-led bloc. Previously, these rules affected everyone equally, but now they only hold weight within the faction that aligns with US leadership. Other factions have started to pursue their own policy nuances, leading to situations like Iran emerging from isolation and challenging Israel, a scenario that would not have been possible if all countries had uniformly followed US sanctions. The US policy not only hampers trade with Iran, but also complicates trade relations with Central Asian countries around the Caspian Sea. Furthermore, the implementation of selective waivers and exceptions, such as Pakistan supplying weapons to Libya, complicates the situation. The challenge of Russian oil also posed a dilemma, as there were limited alternatives available, with even the European countries being affected. These actions contribute to an irregular competitive environment and promote a gray market for commodities. This behavior breeds resentment towards US policies among nations in the US bloc. The gray market allows cheaper commodities to distort the markets, leading to the production of affordable finished products that give certain companies a competitive advantage in different countries. Companies in rival blocs to the US-led bloc have been able to access these goods by using non-dollar payment methods. To protect the USD-based trading system, the US must ensure access to cheaper commodities for its bloc rather than making them expensive. This requires influencing mineral exporters to adopt development rules that align with the US bloc. Additionally, processing these minerals would necessitate technologies, regulations, and policies that position the US bloc competitively. This poses a significant challenge from China, which has emerged as a powerhouse with advanced supply chains and substantial investment relationships with resource-rich nations. Many US partners in Europe and Asia have established production, processing plants in China, further strengthening China's position. De-risking from China has not gained significant traction, although this may change with the US imposing differential tariffs. This likely to result in some manufacturing and processing plants to shift base to other nations to take advantage of lower tariffs in the US. However, for this to occur, the US-led bloc must put in a significant amount of work. Many people fail to understand Chinese actions and may mistakenly perceive China as weak for agreeing to supply critical resources to the US. They may also view low-profit exports from Chinese companies as a sign of weakness, as these exports are often subsidized by Chinese taxpayers. In reality, China's actions should be seen as an effort to safeguard the supply chains that are crucial to its strength. China is working to protect its current customer base while simultaneously developing new, loyal customers to reduce dependency on existing ones. In parallel, it is also strengthening bonds with suppliers, especially those who are supplying critical minerals. The main challenge for China does not come from companies in other nations that the US is supporting through tariff concessions, but rather from resource nationalism in countries with mineral resources. China aims to secure long-term deals to price these resources in renminbi, giving it greater control and enabling it to compete effectively with nations in the US dollar bloc. Meanwhile, the US is preoccupied with the conflict in Europe, which many of its allies are urging it to engage in, as well as internal divisions within the MAGA base that prioritize domestic production over supporting nations within the bloc. This lack of focus on developing supply chains away from China and emphasis on regional dominance is likely to have significant consequences. This is likely to start showing up towards the end of the year 2026, when critical resource supplies start to see disruptions, leading to a clamor for a China deal by the US corporations. The manufacturing base is unlikely to pick up, causing huge disenchantment within MAGA, and inflation begins rising for the US bloc. Current strategies would only lead to the USA becoming as weak as Europe and losing ground in various markets and industries due to cost competition from China. There is a high likelihood that more US corporations will become irrelevant as a result of the inherent weaknesses of regionalized supply chains. While the US may dominate supply sources in a specific region, suppliers are likely to seek more profitable markets globally. This is the nature of business, as companies tend to pursue lucrative markets over time, even if they have gained strength from another source in the short term. The USA is not actively disrupting the supply chains of Chinese corporations, allowing them to strengthen their relationships with suppliers. The core promise of MAGA, to restrict de-dollarization, is more of a slogan, as many suppliers are transitioning to conducting business in other currencies with customers from different countries. The USA may need more resilient and competitive global supply chains to support the US dollar as an alternative to China for sourcing and delivering final products to consumers worldwide. Negotiating which industries and parts of the supply chain can be retained within the US. However, they would be required to ensure the competitiveness of such supply chains. The US corporations may also lead negotiations for investment-led controls in various parts of the world within the newly designed global supply chain. Any other alternative to this approach would be impractical and could result in the US losing its leadership in several industries and overall political influence. I believe that China's primary challenge currently lies in resource nationalism, in countries with mineral resources rather than other issues. This is because it imposes additional costs and investment requirements imposed by nations from where it extracts minerals. Resource nationalism also presents an opportunity for China, as it allows its corporations to replace Western corporations in existing contracts. However, it necessitates a reassessment of opportunities and can impact its industries negatively. While tariff structures, non-tariff barriers, and preferential trade agreements may restrict Chinese firms in some markets, this is not a significant challenge for China at present. Chinese firms are competitive in industries such as civil aircraft, shipping, and medical equipment, where they threaten the dominance of European, American, Japanese, and South Korean companies. China already leads in sectors like solar panels and electric vehicles. While some production has shifted away from China, particularly in mobile phones, China still dominates in manufacturing and exports. There are not any industry sectors where China is under significant threat or at risk of being dislodged from its markets. Despite US and European investments in other nations, presently a resilient supply chain is still some distance away, until such a time Chinese industry is not at risk. Unless US policies significantly disrupt the Chinese supply chain, any pain inflicted will likely be temporary. The potential repercussions of such actions should be considered, but there appears to be little preparation for this. This could hinder global progress in 2026.